should have discussed the agenda item 5 about joint annual report. However, as far as we have several remote presentations and we are missing a bit in a time, so we decided, with your permission, if it's okay, to move those agenda items and first to discuss agenda item 6, matter related to the financial mechanism, and then to get back to the agenda item 5. So we have online Vicky from the Standing Committee of Finance, who will report from the 17th and 18th, meetings of the Standing Committee of Finance. So Vicky, are you here?
Yes, I am.
So floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure, we do. Floor is yours, you can start.
Okay, thank you. So I had some slides ready. I think this will come up. Okay, thank you. So I want to give you an update on what we have discussed during the 2 recent meetings, and then also give you some highlights on what comes next. I'll try to keep it brief because I know you have a busy schedule, and I'll keep it focused on to the issues that are most interesting for the CTCN. So on the first meeting, we had the SCF 17 in April. There we mostly discussed more internal SCF issues like mandates that came from the COP meeting where we had to review the functions of the standing committee and our work plan. On the first issue, what is important for you is that so the COP asked us to look into specific and targeted outputs and recommendations, and there we will focus this work in our biennial assessment, our SCF forums, and also the draft guidance to the operating entities. So those 3 issues we consider to be our main outputs for our work under the COP. The other 3 mandates, still the first slide, sorry. The other 3 we will keep discussing during the next SCF meetings. We didn't really touch upon yet. We're mainly looking into strengthening stakeholder engagements during our meetings because a lot of stakeholders want to get involved. And under the 2018 work plan, this is not that interesting for CTCN colleagues. So I'll just mention there that we had a look in how the SCF could look into the Talanoa dialogue and provide some input there. Thank you. So then on the BA, we had a discussion on the 0 draft, which is very much still work in progress. And then on the SCF forum of the Standing Committee on Finance, which was in 2018 focused on climate finance architecture. We just revised the draft concept and made the program ready for work. The forum in the meantime already took place, so I don't want to spend too much time on this one. The draft guidance issue is a discussion at the SCF 19. So yes, then we go to the next meeting, which was not that long ago after the Bangkok session. There we discussed the potential theme of the next forum, and I think this is something that could be interesting for the CTCN colleagues. Namely, we are looking into working around sustainable cities. As always, a forum, we link it to another institution. Now we are looking to see Border ICLEI or UN Habitat. And it would be interesting to also see if technology colleagues could provide some input. There will be a call for submissions, but we will keep, I'll keep you informed of the data. So far, I don't think such a call has already been launched. And also, interesting for you is on the BA, we know that there is a lot of information on this overview of climate finance, and that we will have our website more updated to make sure that the knowledge is more accessible. On the draft guidance, we had an initial discussion, and we requested inputs of members also from the TEC on the 1st of October, so that was this Monday. And we will also prepare some introductory material on how draft guidance is prepared, because we see that with our colleagues, this is mainly an issue about when and how to prepare for the guidance, how it's happening. So we'll make sure that this is distributed as well. Again, I think the other issues are more of internal SCF matters, except perhaps interesting is that we I mean, as you know, we work with focal points, and that me and Sonia from Canada are the ones related to technology, which is the reason why I'm invited today, I guess. So then we come to the outlook of SCF 19. Like I said, the three main topics there will be the forum of the Standing Committee on Finance. Then we will finalize the 2018 biennial assessment and also prepare some recommendations on the basis of this report. Again, this could also be an interesting document from technology colleagues. And then, of course, the draft guidance to the operating entities of the financial mechanism, where we are looking forward to the input by the Tech Adaptation Committee and also ourselves, the Standing Committee on Finance. And then finally, we will keep talking about stakeholder engagement and also update or at least consider the completion of the SCF work so far, and mainly to prioritize our work a bit more as we get a lot of mandates and work to be done. So that's why in my next slide, I mention again the three main topics. So the 2018 biennial assessment, the forum, and followed by the draft guidance. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Vicky. Dear advisory board members, we are invited to take note to the presentation. However, if you have questions to Vicky, please feel free to have it now. If no, then Vicky, thank you so much for the presentation and for your time. We can move on the next presentation from the Green Climate Fund.
Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and good afternoon to you all. It's my pleasure to provide you with a brief update on GCF support for technology, and I believe we also have a slide. Am I clicking myself or the technology is coming? Thank you so much. But not working. Oh, here we go. Okay, so before going right into the different pillars and operations, I just wanted to step back for a moment to provide you kind of a snapshot of some of the technology-related COP and GCF board mandates, just to outline kind of the policy context. And I will not go into details, but I just wanted to make 2 points here. First is that parties have clearly acknowledged in the Paris Agreement and COP decisions the importance of technology and the role of the GCF to support related actions. And secondly, as you can see from this slide, the GCF board has taken COP decisions into account and addressed technology in various board decisions, besides being generally reflected also in its governing instrument. So in particular at B14 and B18, the board has confirmed that GCF modalities enable support for technology development and transfer, including facilitating access to environmentally sound technologies and for collaborative research and development. And the board has also responded to the COP23 decision where parties requested the GCF to include technology-related information into the annual reports of the GCF to the COP. So now the 7th report of the GCF to COP24 is publicly available, and for the very first time we have included some more information on its support for technology. As I said, that's the very first time. It's also ongoing work in progress, and I will come to that in a minute. So if you look at GCF's engagement for technology, I've clustered it into 3 pillars, and I will talk you through each of them. The first is GCF support for technology in the context of its readiness program. The second one is GCF support through its projects and programs. And then finally, I would like to briefly touch upon GCF's engagement in technical exchange with the CTCN, the TEC, and other relevant stakeholders. So starting off with GCF's readiness program, as you may know, this program generally aims to enhance ownership and access to the fund, for example, through strengthening institutional capacity of NDAs, focal points, and direct access entities to effectively engage with the fund. And looking now, maybe also more interesting for you, at the CTCN readiness requests, as of July 2018, 9 were submitted by NDAs to GCF, and the 9 readiness requests total over approximately 2.5 million in GCF support. Again, of the 9 submitted, 6 have been approved, and they total 1.8 million US dollar. And you have the list of countries here on the slide, including also the CTCN focus of support. Now, in order to assist NDAs, focal points, and NDEs to formulate proposals for technology-related readiness support, the GCF Secretariat has undertaken a version of the so-called GCF Readiness and Preparatory Support Guidebook. And that's kind of a big change because it now also includes 4 technology-related outputs, as you can see here on the slide. So this means that it provides clear guidance on how countries can use readiness resources to enhance the support for climate technologies. For example, by establishing an effective coordination mechanism between NDAs and NDEs, and I think Manfredi touched upon this point this morning. Secondly, by, for example, identifying and prioritizing appropriate climate technologies in accordance with national strategies and plans. Thirdly, by conducting feasibility assessment. And finally, by strengthening market preparation and business planning for the deployment and scale-up of prioritized climate technology solutions. So the guidebook is available online, and we hope that it really provides some helpful guidance moving forward. The GCF Secretariat is also currently exploring ways of building up the required IT infrastructure so that the technology-relevant outputs can be automatically tracked and reported in the GCF system in the future. Now, turning to support for climate technology incubators and accelerators, which goes back to COP21, where parties invited the GCF to consider ways to provide support for collaborative research and development. Responding to this COP decision, as you know, at B18, the board requested the Secretariat to develop a terms of reference for a request for proposals to support climate technology incubators and accelerators. And since then, the Secretariat has undertaken a cross-divisional process to define and develop the terms of reference internally. And in doing so, the Secretariat has also been very mindful of the COP and board guidance to continue collaboration with the TEC and the CTCN seeking their technical expertise. So on that note, we also would like to express once again our sincere appreciation for the good level of collaboration between the GCF, the CTCN, and the TEC in the preparation of the joint thematic dialogue in Bonn in March. And this dialogue was certainly very useful and a very good input to further define the potential scope of the RFP. And we are also very pleased to see that now the summary and the technical report are now published, featuring the first CTCN, TEC, and GCF publications. So that's certainly very positive, and we hope that the document will be very popular in the broader public. We also further discussed with CTCN and TEC representatives the RFP in the sidelines of the SB and through conference calls to further exchange ideas and suggestions. Now turning to the current situation of the RFP, where we are. As you know, the B20 meeting has been a very exceptional meeting for the GCF, resulting now in a very long list of important agenda items that the board has to address at B21 in 2 weeks' time. And given this context, and as you may have also seen from the published agenda that is out now, the RFP on climate technology incubators and accelerators is no longer reflected in that agenda. So we expect that the board will pick up the matter in 2019, and as we have also communicated in a letter to the CTCN and the chairs. Due to this situation, we will have to put our technical exchange on this particular matter on hold until we receive further guidance from our board. But having said that, I also would like to underline that the GCF is generally supportive regarding work on incubators and accelerators in the context of the readiness program or through funding proposals, and also very appreciative for the findings that came out of the thematic dialogue and that is now reflected in the joint publication. And so we still expect that the outcome of this joint dialogue will form a very important technical basis for the input that will go to the board when the board will consider it. Turning to GCF support for technology through its projects and programs, as I mentioned at the beginning, for the very first time, we have included some more detailed project level information on technology in GCF's project and program portfolio. It's presented in the 7th GCF report in form of an indicative or illustrative list of 11 technology-related projects and programs. And when you go through the list, it included support in all regions, including LDCs, SIDS, and Africa. Projects also covered mitigation, adaptation, and cross-cutting activities covering results areas such as energy generation and access, health, food and water security, and livelihoods, buildings, and cities. 3 projects finance private sector activities, and 5 are implemented by direct access entities. So as I said, that's the very first time. We also look forward to further feedback on how to improve our reporting. And as I also mentioned yesterday, it's also very much linked to the ongoing work on our technology key performance indicators and related work that is picked up by our Office of Performance Management and the work of the Independent Evaluation Unit. Finally, let me also briefly touch upon the general collaboration between GCF, the CTCN, and TEC. I found overall that the collaboration has been very constructive, also between the secretariats, and here I also would like to mention the UNFCCC secretariat that has been very helpful in the organization of the thematic dialogue and publishing the joint report. So I touched upon the collaboration in the context of the RFP. The CTCN at the regional level has also been participating in the structured dialogues that the GCF is holding in form of technical clinics. Again, the GCF participated in the CTCN's regional forum in Seoul, and we also look forward to CTCN contributions now during the 3rd annual dialogue between the GCF and the constituted bodies at COP24. So in this spirit, we look forward to continuing working closely with you in the future in areas of mutual interest and relevance so that we can move the technology agenda forward together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea, for the presentation. The advisory board is invited to take notes of the GCF presentation and provide the guidance. So if you would have any comments or need some clarification. Okay, so we will have first, we will have the CTCN presentation about the engagement with the GCF, and then we can collect all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon now, colleagues. I hope you had a good lunch. So just to frame the engagement that the CTCN has had with the Green Climate Fund over the last year, we framed it into the 3 levels of engagement: national, regional, global. The national being mainly the GCF readiness programs and the coordination activities between national designated entities and national determined authorities, NDAs. Regional, again, as we heard, the cross-participation in regional meetings, and the global level on collaboration on innovation and research and demonstration and development and demonstration and exchange of knowledge and information. Starting with the national level, in 2018 we have concluded, or we will be concluding, the first the implementation of the first two readiness proposal that we have implemented in, if we can move to the next slide, please, Scott, in Ghana and Tonga for a value of around $500,000. And we have started implementation of 4 others in Bahamas, Mauritius, Myanmar, and Palestine for a value that is around slightly over $1.2 million. We have submitted an additional 2 proposals that we're waiting for approval. One for Cuba on a vision to concept and a TNA technology need assessment in Cook Islands. And we have 6 technical assistants in the pipelines that might become more in the next few months that we plan on submitting for 2019. And also, as Andreas mentioned, we're very pleased to have seen and actually contributed to the inclusion of the technology outputs in the readiness guidebook, and we hope this is going to be an helpful tool for NDEs and NDAs to strengthen their collaboration at national level. Next slide, please, Scott. In terms of cross-participation in regional meetings, the GCF was invited to all regional fora that the CTCN has hosted in 2018. I think he participated to 2 out of 3, and we participated in 2 of the GCF structured dialogues in Asia and Eastern Europe and Central Asia. As Andrea was mentioning, we organized technology clinics, one that was also hosted by Maya as chair of the advisory board for the Eastern Europe and Central Asia structured dialogue. And also we invited national designated authorities into the focal point workshop that we organized in Central Asia following a model that we started in 2017. In terms of participation in the structured dialogues, we hope that we are going to be able to increase the visibility of the CTCN in these structured dialogues going forward. The technology clinics are a very useful tool, but it's also a very competitive space in which there are several clinics in parallel. So it's not that easy to attract participants to participate in the one that the CTCN organizes. And in this sense, we hope that we're starting discussion with the Secretariat, and then we hope that we'll be able to have countries, national designated entities or national designated authorities present in plenaries on their experience, their experience of collaboration between the NDE and the NDAs, and how the CTCN can support the NDAs in advancing technology projects that then can be fed into the GCF pipeline. And on the global level, this has already been said, there's been in a collaboration with the Technology Executive Committee in the GCF on National System of Innovations, the publication that was recently launched, and we look forward to participating in the meeting with the constituted bodies that the GCF Secretariat organizes at COP, as we have done last year, and we plan, of course, to be present and contribute with the experience that we have built at national level at COP24. Thank you.
Thank you, Manfredi. Colleagues, if you have comments or need some clarifications for those 2 presentations. Okay, Jan, please.
Thank you. Just to say, I think GCF and CTCN have done a really excellent job on this over the last few years. It's been a lot of work to try and coordinate NDEs and NDAs and secretariats. So just to say, well done on this. Great to see the readiness proposals going forward, and look forward to seeing continued work through the GCF readiness program linking to CTCN in future. I guess one question I'd be interested in getting a sense of kind of the extra effort it takes to coordinate requests like this, because obviously there's an extra layer of coordination for combining both NDEs and NDAs to put a request in. So from the Secretariat's perspective, does this take more time? Are there more resources involved? I think that's just helpful to know about. And I guess connected to that, so all of the CTCN, GCF work so far has been through the readiness program. But I'm also wondering, is there scope for thinking about larger projects down the road? Could you really imagine, a multi-country effort, say if 5 or 6 countries wanted deep dive work on their power sector and GCF thought this was a paradigm shift proposal, or whatever the criteria are for approving projects. I mean, would that be something worth thinking about in the longer run, so we kind of try and scale up our ambition in some sense? Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Claudia?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for Andrea for that presentation, and for this. I would like to also join the appreciation on the work done by the CTCN and the GCF. I think this is showing good collaboration and a good way forward to continue the linkage of the technology mechanism and the financial mechanism. I think this is very important work. I think it will be also appreciated by parties as we report on the progress on the application of the program. Also, I think it's important to mention that the work on innovation and incubators and accelerators had a very good kickstart also with the meeting convened by the CTCN in Paris early this year. And it was good to have the GCF there too. I think that also helped the discussion and the preparatory work towards a joint event on the thematic dialogue during the Tech 16. So I think that's also very good work. And as an IB member, I think it's also very much welcome that the GCF has engaged in that dialogue. I would also like to encourage the acceleration of the discussion on the request for proposals going forward from the GCF. I think this will be a very good sign of the collaboration between the two mechanisms. And finally, just also on the issue of scaling up and strengthening the collaboration, it would be very good to have some ideas and reflection as part of the annual operating plan, as we mentioned on that paragraph 18, but also as a medium-term strategy on how are we going to go forward on scaling up projects and collaboration between the two mechanisms. So I think this is something that would be worthwhile discussing together with colleagues from the GCF. Thank you.
Thank you. Spencer, please.
Thank you very much, and let me also say that this work is well appreciated and well done, as Ian and Claudia has already indicated. Just a question on the issue relating to the private sector, whether or not the CTCN is contemplating some mechanism to introduce our network members to the GCF, and to find, because I understand the GCF also has a private sector disposition. So maybe we can look also to see what methodologies can be used to tie our network members closer to the GCF. So that might be one area that we can look at. And also the lessons learned from this collaboration with the GCF could also be something that we might want to ensure that we profit from in terms of other outreach from the CTCN to other organizations like other multilateral banks and other lending agencies.
Thank you, Spencer. Are there any other comments? If not, I will also put my chair like this to make a bit reflection about the GCF's presentation and about the Manfredi's presentation, namely. And I would also like to highlight that it's really very important to increase the visibility of the CTCN, and the GCF structural dialogues are really very good platform for this, for that. And we already had several times, one last year in Georgia, the thematic dialogue, and which was including the CTCN NDs and GCF NDAs also. And it will be very good to have, it's my opinion, to have a fixed structure within these structural dialogues about the CTCN and GCF, to have this kind of common events, which in our case last year was really very good and very productive, and we had also one in Tajikistan 2 weeks ago. So it is very good, and I think we can push for this. Yeah, thank you. So if you could provide, your comments about, had a question regarding the scale-up. However, I think that it needs accreditation in order to be funded from the GCF, so I'm not sure whether the CTCN is going to get accreditation. Maybe we can think more on other directions. But please, Andrea.
Thank you, colleagues, for your questions. So responding to Ian and the transaction costs or the timeliness. Obviously, I mean, the key principle of the GCF is country-drivenness. And so there is an NDA, then there are delivery partners, and then there's the GCF secretariat, and there's a high level, of communication moving forth and back, which obviously then also increases communication. And I think Manfredi will be able to tell you more about his experience. But I think it's at the end of the day then really putting the countries in the driving seat. And if this, goes along with taking a bit more time, I think that's the trade-off in the end. As Maya already underlined, whether to have more upscaled projects, this wouldn't go through the readiness support, obviously, but through entities and the entry point through projects and programs. And then relating to Claudia's question, again, also in scaling up, maybe you will, or that's also another element to be discussed at the annual dialogue between the GCF and with the thematic bodies. At the moment, we are finalizing kind of our ideas or the concept note in consultation with the co-chairs. But I think that has already been also highlighted at the tech meeting, that we are not envisioning kind of discussing a specific topic, but we suggested to have more stock-taking session about the collaboration between the GCF and the thematic bodies, and to generate some lessons learned. And I think that's maybe some area to further highlight and discuss at the meeting at COP23. And then finally, relating to Maya's point and enhancing the visibility of CTCN in structured dialogues, I think, we have well taken note of that. Maybe just to highlight again that the structured dialogues are very much, again, country-driven. The agenda is also, again, very much country-focused, and the forum should be kind of highly be there for countries to give them a voice in this kind of setting. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that it's really about the country perspective. And if, for example, a country is very eager to have like a focus on technology or to promote kind of the CTCN in that setting, I think that's something to further explore. But overall, it's more about adjusting the country's needs in these kind of settings, what they want to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. If we can move on the third presentation from the Global Environmental. Okay. Yes, please, Manfred.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that there were a bunch of questions that were directed to the CTCN Secretariat, not to the GCF Secretariat, including the the level of efforts for the preparation and the implementation and the reporting of the GCF readiness proposal from the CTCN. Yes, it takes more effort, it takes more time, and we're effectively quote unquote subsidizing GCF readiness proposal because we invest resources to get them ready, and this is not necessarily paid back by for example, by the fee that the GCF provides to the delivery partner entities. But this is we believe part of our mandate. Happy to do it. There is a matter of timeliness, and certainly a GCF request takes 3 to 4 months longer than a regular technical assistance to be finalized, because it requires a level of interaction between the GCF Secretariat, the in-country focal points, and the CTCN Secretariat that we do not experience in requests that we treat directly. Another point that complicates a little things is that the GCF readiness program operates in windows. So they have 3 windows, 3 yearly windows in which they receive requests, and the CTCN does not. So, for example, a request that we would receive now on the 1st of October could only be submitted to the GCF in February of 2019. And this obviously has implication in terms of the timeliness of our assistance. Very happy to explore possibility for multi-country requests under readiness. We had understood that this is not encouraged, but if this is not the case, then certainly it makes sense and would increase the efficiency of our engagement with the GCF. In terms of network members that are part of the CTCN that to interact with GCF, we do provide information to our network members. Well, first of all, I should say that the network members of the CTCN are those that in most cases implement the GCF readiness proposal that we submitted to them. In particular, in the 5 cases that I mentioned for 2018, this is the case, and we also share information about opportunities for private sector entities that come to our knowledge, including, for example, a request for proposal on community practices that has a very strong technology component that the GCF has recently launched and that we have shared with our network members. This also creates potentially a risk of conflict of interest, and in the sense that we fear that if those network members would then become operator of or participants in the community of practice of the GCF, then they would have more difficulties in engaging with us. So this is something that we hope. We hope that our network member will be engaging with the GCF, but on the other side, we need them and use them ourselves. So there is a little bit of tension on this. And on your point, Maya, on the visibility and on Andrea's response, I mean, we're happy to discuss what is possible. Again, our idea would not be that the CTCN is presenting itself in the structured dialogues and presenting the opportunities that there are of collaboration between the GCF and the CTCN, but rather to have countries who have already experienced this collaboration to be the ambassador of the CTCN, and again, as we have done in the technology clinic, but in the clinics, but that. We hope it can happen in a more broad gathering, so in the plenaries of this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Manfredi, and sorry for skipping you twice during the presentation. So we can move on to the 3rd presentation from the Global Environmental Facility, report from the GEF Assembly and discussion of options for CTCN's engagement with the GEF. So Katya, floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Katia Kwang Idba, and I will be providing a brief update on the JEF's technology transfer portfolio, as well as technology elements in the JEF 7 programming directions. The first two slides are just a little background on the technology transfer portfolio of the JEF. So in 2007, the JEF was requested by the COP to establish a program promoting investment on technology transfer. In 2008, the Poznan Strategic Program, the PSP, was established with $50 million in financing. That was $35 million from the JEF Trust Fund and $15 million from the SCCF, the Special Climate Change Fund. In 2010, the JEF outlined elements of a long-term implementation of the PSP, and the 5 elements are listed below. They include the CTCN, which are the Climate Technology Centers and Network, piloting technology projects, public-private partnership for technology transfer, technology needs assessments, and JEF as a catalytic supporting institution for technology transfer. These are just some highlights of the PSP. So we currently have 4 regional technology centers under implementation, including, and a 5th, which is the global CTCN project. We also have 14 pilot projects, which are national tech transfer projects and TNAs. The 3rd phase of the TNA was just CEO endorsed in March 2018, and the project has recently begun implementation. This is a status update of the CTCN projects in our portfolio. We have received PIRs from all 5 of the projects. The African CTCN project is not listed here because we received the PIR late, but we did receive it. And this slide provides an overview of support for technology transfer in JEF 7. Just to kind of give a brief overview, the JEF 7 replenishment package was adopted in June 2018. The total package was at $4.1 billion. For climate change mitigation, the funding envelope is at $802 million, with a set aside of $291 million, which includes financing for enabling activities, CBIT, integrated programming for the impact programs, and regional and global projects, and that's $18 million. Country allocations will continue to deliver on key climate change mitigation priorities, including technology transfer, and the JEF will continue to support developing countries in undertaking TNAs and piloting priority technology projects. There will continue to be a set-aside for TNAs for SIDS and LDCs. And climate change mitigation projects will continue to be country-driven and required to demonstrate alignment to national priorities, including national climate strategies and plans, which includes the TNA. Just to give a further elaboration of the programming under climate change mitigation, in JEF 7, there are 3 main objectives. The first objective directly relates to technology transfer, and that is promoting innovation, technology transfer for sustainable energy breakthroughs, and there are 4 entry points under this objective. That includes decentralized renewable power with energy storage, electric drive technologies and electric mobility, accelerating energy efficiency adoption, and the last one is clean tech innovation. The other 2 objectives are demonstrating mitigation options with systemic impacts and fostering enabling conditions for mainstreaming mitigation concerns into sustainable development strategies. The JEF 7 framework is structured to continue to address COP decisions and guidance for the Paris Agreement and to further support climate action in developing countries in line with the JEF's role as an operating entity of the financial mechanism of the UNFCCC. And we'll continue to build on the Jeff's unique capacity to integrate multifocal area priorities across the MEAs to deliver greater global environmental benefits. So while the objectives will continue to be addressed through country-driven investments in the focal areas and impact programs, the JEF is refocusing its approach, relying on 3 key elements, which are related to technology. The first being innovation and risk-taking, the second being demonstration and deployment, and the third being accelerated technology transfer. Aside from the JEF Trust Fund, I just wanted to mention we do also have 2 adaptation funds that are overseen by the JEF. The Special Climate Change Fund is particularly interesting because we've just had some operational improvements approved at the JEF Council in June. The SCCF was established by the COP in 2001 to finance climate change activities that are meant to be complementary to those funded by the JEF Trust Fund for Climate Change Mitigation. And the SCCF is programmed primarily through 2 windows, the first being Climate Change Adaptation Window, SCCF-A, the second being the SCCF-B, which is for technology transfer. And in comparison with the other adaptation fund under the JEF, which is the LDCF, specifically for LDCs, the SCCF is a diverse, creative, technically robust, and is supporting cutting-edge methodologies and solutions in developing countries, and including in highly vulnerable non-LDCs like SIDS. So under the SCCF, in the new JEF 7 period, we have 2 modalities. The first one being the one that would probably be more relevant for the CTCN. It's a challenge program for adaptation. And the challenge program for adaptation innovation will be organized by modifying the existing SCCF pre-selection process, which was approved at the 13th LDCF SCCF Council in October 2012. So the concepts will be solicited from countries when there's more than $5 million in resources available in the SCCF for this purpose. Currently, we have around $11 million, and we're planning to do a call for proposals sometime in the next year. We'll probably have more information about that by COP24, I think. So based on just a little bit more detail, based on information on resource availability and projections, the council will decide when and if the JEF Secretariat will call for proposals. And the council will also have the final decision on the themes as well. The second modality is the incentive for mainstreaming adaptation and resilience, but this is more relating to impact programming with the JEF Trust Fund, so it's a little bit less relevant. I also wanted to mention that we had in response to Decision 10 from COP23, we were requested to work with the CTCN to gain information on collaboration between the NDEs and JEF OFPs on matters relating to development and transfer of climate technologies. The results of the survey show that in total, 69 NDEs responded to the survey. And of these respondents, 64% noted that they do have information regarding the JEF portfolio in their respective countries. 49% of NDEs indicated that they meet regularly with JEF OFPs to support coordination at the national level. And of these, half of them meet every 3 months or less. And I think that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks. Colleagues, if you have any questions or comments to the Jeff? Yes, please. Mette.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you also for coming to our meeting. It's very much appreciated. I'm also very glad to hear how Jeff 7 now focus on technology transfer and technology development and dissemination. I do have a question on how this can be linked to the support. Is there any possibility that the focus on technology in Jeff 7 can be linked to the request from developing countries coming in and through the CTCN? That is not clear to me how we can strengthen that link, so I would like to hear more about your thoughts on how that can be done, and maybe also how a structured dialogue between the JEF and the CTCN can be established to make sure that our cooperation moves forward, maybe in the same line as we have with the GCF. That was my major comment and question. And then you mentioned several times that the TNAs will continue to be funded. And I wonder, is that a continuation of the Poznan program, or is that through another effort? Thank you.
Thank you, Mette. Claudia?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to Ms. Kwan for her presentation. Very useful to hear from the JEF efforts on technology development and transfer activities. So I wanted to second Mette's question. It will be very important for us as AB to get your views on how the JEF and the CTCN can better coordinate. We've heard very good collaboration with the GCF, and I think it would be very valuable for us to better understand how can we expand the avenues for collaboration with the JEF. We know there is some funding, as has highlighted, that to support CTCN activities, but we do believe that more collaboration will be very welcome by parties, as we are trying to strengthen in the links between the two mechanisms of the convention. So if you could share some ideas with us so that we can also inform our own discussion on how can we advise the CTCN activities on strengthening the collaboration with the JEF. So that's also my main point I wanted to ask you, but I also have two more questions. The first one regarding to TNA funding. I believe there has been some selection of countries that will be supported by TNAs. So I was wondering what is the criteria behind that selection of countries, and if some countries only I believe least developed countries and seats have been prioritized. But I would like to understand if there is some thinking on also supporting other developing countries that might want to conduct TNAs. And the last question has to do with the adaptation components. So thank you very much also for explaining to us a little bit more of the JEF's work on adaptation. For us, it's very important also to understand what sources of funding there is available for adaptation. So I wanted to ask you for the figure, how much money is there to support adaptation projects for the implementation of parties' action on that line. And also, I understand the main fund is not funding adaptation, it's done by these other funds. But you did mention that now JEF 7 has some issues on systemic impacts and supporting other development strategies. So I was wondering how much work, or asking if there is a possibility to try to at least get some of the co-benefits and make sure that there is not maladaptation actions induced by some of the mitigation projects, and that will require some development on the methodologies and the things, and more clear targeting the understanding of adaptation implications on JEF projects. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. Hugo?
Yeah, as a member of advisory board myself also, one question to you is that As you started the Bosnian strategic program for technical assistance with $50 million, and then you did put $40 million to the multilateral regional banks for technical assistance. And then you have, I think, that supported TNA program with about $30 million. All of that $120 million input during the 10 years time now, starting from 2008. I wonder, have you any aggregated quantitative impacts on all these efforts, as we are your sister body and we are struggling with trying to demonstrate impacts of technical assistance. And exactly, we are doing also technology need assessment by those countries who have not been receiving that support from GEF as well. So in a way, we are doing the same business, and that's why the lessons learned is so important and valuable. So we would also see that have you look at some kind of aggregated impacts of all of those efforts.
Thank you, Yuka. Maybe if you can respond to some of the questions.
Thank you for all your questions. Let me start with how to improve or encourage collaboration between CTCN and the GEF. In GEF 7, the set aside for global projects has been decreased now to $18 million, which isn't a lot of money. So we would encourage the CTCN to inform country-level submissions and to work together with the countries to develop proposals for GEF funding. There are a lot of opportunities for that, especially since it's the beginning of the GEF 7 funding cycle. In the beginning of this cycle, we have structured national dialogues. We have the national portfolio formulation exercise. We have extended constituency workshops and meetings at the country level, which all of which I think the CTCN can participate in. And we'd be happy to communicate with more information with CTCN colleagues. But these are discussions that we've had several times already this year with the CTCN regarding the best modality for them to access GEF financing. And we think collaborating with the countries is probably the best way. As far as TNAs, I wouldn't say that it's a continuation of the PSP, but elements of the PSP have been retained for long-term implementation of this program within the GEF climate change mitigation programming strategy. We have heard from UN Environment that they're thinking of developing a phase 4 for the TNA Global Support Project, which we are happy to continue discussing with them. As far as eligibility, LDCs and SIDS are eligible to access the set-aside, which doesn't come from their STAR allocation, but all countries that do not yet have a TNA are eligible to finance TNAs with their STAR funding. As far as for adaptation, both of the adaptation funds, the SECF and the LDCF, they follow a voluntary contribution model, so we don't have a formal replenishment model for them at the moment. So the funding is also it's always quite unpredictable. At the moment, we have 11 million in the SECF, and we have around 60 million in the LDCF. But the LDCF also has a pipeline currently of 21 projects, and it's around $120 million. So funding availability depends on whether or not we're going to receive any pledges this year, or we generally tend to receive pledges around COP time, but we don't have any visibility on that. As far as the relevance to this CTCN, As I mentioned, for the SCCF, there is the adaptation, the challenge program, and there's nothing stopping countries from using those resources to work with the CTCN at the country level. And okay, for impacts, we haven't done any aggregated kind of analysis on impacts. We do request agencies to submit documentation from their projects at midterm and terminal evaluation stage, but that doesn't mean that we receive all of them. So we do have results, but we haven't done an aggregated exercise on them. But we also can only analyze the results that we receive. So sometimes we have some difficulty receiving those types of reports from the agencies, and we're working with them to ensure that we do receive that documentation, and it's something that we can discuss further.
Thank you very much. We have the fourth presentation, which is a remote presentation from the Adaptation Fund, and if we have the online. Ferre Matsiwa, if I spell it correctly, will make the presentation. And after the fourth presentation, I will also open the floor for the observers for you to be able to reflect on the. Okay, Matt.
Sorry to come back, but thank you so much for your response. And I do appreciate the different possibilities that you were mentioning. I understand from your, for what you're saying, that the cooperation at the national level will be the best place for countries to coordinate whether their request to the CTCN can correspond with the JEF financing. Yes, you're nodding. That's good. Then I wonder, is there also, based on Mexico's intervention, is there some way that we can, and I'm also looking at the Secretariat to help make sure that these things will happen, that like with the GCF, you have a memorandum of understanding between the two secretariats that has been developed over time. Is there any ground for a similar discussion to go forward between the CTCN and the JEF? Thank you.
If you can respond, and probably maybe CTCN also would like to have a floor.
If I can just quickly add before they respond, just very quickly. I think just for adding a little bit on this request, and just from the country perspective, it will be very useful because for countries when they are putting together their JEF proposals and CTCN proposals and GCF proposals, it really helps if the secretariats coordinate and have streamlined procedures and thinking about, as possible, how can they better advise countries on how to do this. It's always very good for the bodies to coordinate, and I think this has been successfully done with some examples now with the GCF, so it would be very much appreciated if some procedure can be forward with the CTCN as well.
Thank you for the question. Well, thank you for the follow-up, and thank you for the suggestion. It's something that I'm sure internally we'd be very interested and happy to discuss that with you. I can't give you an answer on how we can do that right at this moment, but I'd be happy to continue discussing with you, perhaps bilaterally or after, perhaps.
Okay, indeed, we have, for example, changed letters between the host agency and the Green Climate Fund Secretariat. So there is this kind of precedence which we are happy to to discuss with the Secretariat to the GEF that whether we could again change the letters on collaboration, what we can do. So that definitely we can open this discussion. You noted that of that $4.1 billion replenishment, 18 million has been set aside for climate, kind of global actions. So it's very small money to kind of look at the multilateral exchange, and that's why we have heard, and you heard now, that GEF is strongly advising us to go to countries, because it's a country star allocation where they can opt for collaborating with CTCN also, and the COP has actually advised us to work on that if the country wishes to do so. So it is the matter of then how to take the how to get the countries to get interested in that. So when we have met countries, NDEs in the regional settings, we have always taken up this issue that please, before you think that you can exhaust all the CTCN core financing for technical assistance, look at whether you actually have opportunities in your country allocation for GEF or readiness financing for 3 Climate Fund. And then we look at whether this has been exhausted. So if the country has already fully obliged them for the purposes they have, of course, prioritized, then indeed, then we, of course, use our whatever we have got in our purses and do. But very often we meet countries who have said that they have not ever kind of look at it and that way. So in a way, that is maybe something is awareness raising and communicating, which we can do together. But as said, we also look at whether there is possibilities to have something on the special finance funds which you have got, that whether we could form such a program or some kind of approach which would fulfill your criteria. And so that discussion is still there. It's just we have not go into details yet.
Thank you, Jukka. Can we move to the fourth presentation, please? Yes. Presentation will be delivered by the Adaptation Fund by Ferrey Matsiwa. So the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Can you? Okay. I hope you can all hear me clearly. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for inviting us to give a presentation at this meeting. So my presentation will be quite brief. I'll just present on some of the activities happening within the Adaptation Fund currently, and also highlighting some of the opportunities in collaboration and partnership with CTCN. So, as you know, the Adaptation Fund finances concrete adaptation activities that are based on country needs, views, and priorities to help vulnerable communities, developing countries adapt to climate change. And since its inception, the fund has approved $512 million for 77 countries, 29 of which are NDCs, 18 of these are small island developing states. The fund has $250 million worth of projects and programs under development, which consist of 21 single country projects, as well as 60 regional projects. Now, currently, the fund has $190 million available funding. But also, just to emphasize or to mention here that the fund does resource mobilization annually. So, every year at the COP, we would engage in resource mobilization and on an annual basis. And I'd like also to highlight that currently the board has received a record number of projects and programs submitted for funding, which indicates a high demand for adaptation finance. and high demand for resources from the fund. And we have received $264 million worth of project proposal. And these are submitted to the board for consideration at this 32nd meeting, which actually will be taking place next week. If not,
Sorry.
so, oh, okay.
Yeah, because we can't hear you well. Probably the problem of the signal, but can you just speak a bit loudly in order to be able? Loudly. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, I'll try and do that. So the fund has a readiness program which provides capacity building support for direct access. And the readiness program focuses mainly on direct access because actually 60% of the fund's implementing entities are direct access entities. And so the specific objectives of the readiness program for the adaptation fund is to increase the number of direct access entities under the fund and also to provide capacity building and support for project development. The fund's readiness program is implemented through 4 key components, and all the activities of the readiness program are structured around these 4 key components. The first component is providing support to accredited implementing entities, and there are various activities or instruments that are available to provide this support, which include grants, technical assistance grants, which are available to national implementing entities. We also have seminars, and we've just concluded our 5th annual seminar for national implementing entities, which we held at the end of August recently. We also have webinars, and we have the 7th webinar scheduled for the end of October this year. And we also hold workshops. And I've just highlighted also in green some of the opportunities for collaboration and partnership with the CTCN on some of the activities that are done under the readiness program. We also have, can you still hear me?
We do, at some point. We do hear you.
Okay, great. So we also have cooperation and partnership is another key component. And here we focus on working with organizations that are also providing readiness and capacity building support for adaptation financing and for project development. And we have worked with various institutions and organizations, including civil society organizations, as well as our own accredited national implementing entities and multilateral implementing entities. And I should mention here that we have actually in the past partnered with the CTCN, and at the SB 46 meetings held in Bonn, we actually jointly hosted a meeting where we brought together organizations that are providing readiness support for adaptation activities and adaptation financing. A third key component is providing support to countries that are seeking accreditation with the fund. And here we also have some instruments and activities that we hold under that key component, including grants. We provide South-South cooperation grants to developing countries seeking accreditation with the fund to receive peer support from already accredited entities. And we also have, as of last year, a readiness support package, which essentially also provides support for accreditation, but in a more tailored and structured way and targeted way. We host regional workshops. We've held regional workshops now in just about most regions of the globe where developing countries are. And we are currently exploring the possibility of holding a regional workshop in November of this year. And this is again an area that we will be very happy or very open to partnering with the CTCN and other organizations that are interested in in capacity building and providing support to developing countries. And we also have tools and guidance documents that are available to developing countries seeking accreditation with the fund. The last component is knowledge management. And we have a knowledge management strategy under the fund, and the readiness program, through its ongoing activities, provides support to the fund's knowledge management strategy. There are key activities under the knowledge management strategy of the fund that feed directly into the readiness program. And as part of the knowledge management of the fund broadly, we also have a community of practice of our accredited national implementing entities. And we actually have an online platform which is hosted by WRI for the community of practice for national implementing entities of the fund. We also have a climate finance ready website, and this is a knowledge, I wouldn't call it a repository, but it's a knowledge platform that includes publications, case studies, materials on adaptation financing, and we are jointly hosting or managing this website together with CTCN. We have a memorandum of understanding with them to manage and maintain this website to provide adaptation information out there, not just on the adaptation fund, but broadly talking about adaptation financing and access to adaptation resources. And I'm aware that there has been discussion as well under the CTCN to have a knowledge management platform, and this is an area that we could probably also engage in discussion on how it can either be complementary to an existing climate finance ready website, or they can be linked together, or to explore ways of exchanging knowledge and managing knowledge between the two organizations or institutions. We have, as part of knowledge management also, and initiated and driven by the readiness program for the fund, we have a study that we commissioned last year. The study is nearing completion, and we have a paper coming out of this study. It's a study on capacity building and providing readiness support for direct access, looking at the climate funds under the UNFCCC that are providing readiness and capacity building, and this, namely the GCF, the GIF, and the Adaptation Fund, looking at the activities that these three funds have been engaging in supporting developing countries, some of the challenges of developing countries accessing readiness and capacity building support, and it will have broadly also kind of recommendations to all three funds on how they could improve the delivery of readiness and capacity building support to developing countries, and working with entities that are interested in accessing resources from the funds. Now, in October 2017, the board approved a medium-term strategy for the fund. And the medium-term strategy outlines the fund's purpose, objectives, and mission. It is aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement and also with the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically Goal 13 to do with climate. The medium-term strategy is based on three main pillars, which are action, innovation, and learning and sharing. So effectively, focusing on some of the things that the fund has already been delivering on. And it also includes cross-cutting areas, which include gender readiness, institutional and technical capacity for effective adaptation, and also with a focus on engaging and empowering the most vulnerable communities and social groups. So the medium-term strategy retains the fund's focus on the most vulnerable countries and communities. Now, together with the medium-term strategy, we developed an implementation plan, which was approved in March 2018, which is this year. And as part of this implementation plan, there are activities and new modalities that were approved by the board as well. And I'll just highlight some of the new funding modalities that are included in the implementation plan. And under the three main pillars, so under action, we have two new funding windows that are available. There's the window for enhanced direct access. So in enhanced direct access, has attracted a lot of interest from developing countries. There are already some projects that are implementing adaptation activities through enhanced direct access. And so there's now a new window to support enhanced direct access to climate finance. And this window will have 20 million US dollars available per year. And approximately about 10 grants are available through the span of the medium-term strategy, which runs for 5 years. So the medium-term strategy is running until 2022. We also have project scale-up micro grants, which are available as a new funding modality. And these are essentially to explore opportunities or to actually scale up existing adaptation fund projects for funding by other sources of climate finance, be it other climate funds out there or private sector or other funding modalities outside of the adaptation fund. And the scale-up grants are effectively to provide support for planning for that scale-up and to actually put forward action towards scaling up existing projects. Under innovation, there are two grants that are available. They are large grants of about $5 million to roll out, scale up innovation. And these could be innovative projects or innovative solutions to adaptation or to building resilience. And we also have 90 million US dollars that is available over 5 years for about 18 grants to roll out innovative action and innovative projects. We also have under innovation as well, smaller grants of up to 250,000, and these are essentially to explore new ideas, new activities, essentially, to put it kind of bluntly, trial and error. And these are essentially meant to create an evidence base of new activities that could be implemented under adaptation or to build resilience. And these are the amount that is available for these exploratory activities are up to $16 million over the 5 years of the medium-term strategy. And essentially, it would cover about 64 of such grants to try out and explore new innovative solutions to building resilience. The third funding modality that is available is under the learning pillar. And here we have South-South learning grants that are available. And these will be available to accredited national implementing entities at the moment, so for direct access implementing entities, and they're up to $150,000 per project, and they're meant for the national implementing entities to be able to share learning tools, learning practices, learning instruments, and other learning products that they will have built and developed through the implementation of adaptation projects funded by the Adaptation Fund and their broader portfolio of adaptation activities with other national implementing entities, with other developing countries, so as to broaden the learning and sharing on adaptation. So, as I have mentioned, because we have already established a partnership with the CTCN and we already engaged in activities before where we have collaborated with the CTCN, the discussion on collaboration and partnership with the CTCN between the Adaptation Fund and CTCN has been kind of ongoing, at least at the Secretariat level. And we have been exploring ways of furthering this collaboration and partnership. And this is still under discussion, but we have, in a sense, identified kind of two areas that we could continue this partnership and collaboration in the next year. And this includes looking at awareness raising opportunities to increase access to climate adaptation support and capacity building. And we have also looked at learning opportunities where we can share experiences and exchange on our experiences between the CTCN and the Adaptation Fund, but also looking at other players who are providing readiness and capacity building for adaptation broadly. So the expected outcomes from this proposed two areas where we could potentially enhance and further collaborate include enhanced understanding of direct access. If we are working with other organizations as well that are providing readiness and capacity building support for adaptation specifically, and also enhanced understanding by developing countries of processes and procedures under the two funds to receive support and access resources from both the CTCN and the Adaptation Fund. Also, greater familiarization with other available readiness and capacity building support modalities by other organizations and institutions out there outside of the CTCN and the Adaptation Fund that would be part of this learning or learning objective and sharing experiences. And also effective delivery of readiness and capacity building support. So when we had the meeting with the other organizations providing readiness and capacity building support, we realized that we are actually working in sometimes the same countries, sometimes on the same projects even. And so countries are receiving dual support from different sources in terms of readiness and capacity building support. So it would help to know which organizations are working in what countries and what kind of support they're providing so that we try and streamline the support that developing countries receive so that we become more effective in the delivery of readiness and capacity building support. So that is one of the expected outcomes of working with the CCC on those two objectives and other providers as well. There's also the identification of solutions to the barriers affecting uptake of readiness support. So even though sometimes there is readiness and capacity building support available to developing countries, sometimes developing countries are unable to access this support for various reasons, and through engagement and discussion with other players involved in providing readiness and capacity building support, we might be able to find solutions to enhance access to the available support. And also awareness of opportunities for innovation in capacity building support. Traditionally, there has been, we've held workshops to provide readiness and capacity building support. There have been grants by different funders and so forth, but we would like to explore also opportunities for innovative solutions to capacity building and the delivery of readiness support to developing countries. Also strengthen partnerships. We already have a very good and solid partnership with the CTCN, and we hope to be able to expand this to other organizations that are in the field of readiness and that are providing capacity building support for adaptation finance to developing countries. And the target audience for this proposed partnership and activities working together with the CTCN, we expect that, of course, the direct beneficiaries would be the organizations that are providing support, benefiting from more effective delivery of readiness and capacity building support, and from the knowledge and information on the different resources and organizations, the regions they are working, resources available to developing countries that are seeking support from them. But they are also beneficiaries who are the developing countries themselves and specifically the organizations and the entities that are seeking to access resources from the Adaptation Fund, that are seeking technical assistance from the CTCN, and other climate funds out there. And of course, specifically also looking at government representatives and focal points of the different funds and of the CTCN as well. So that is, in summary, my short presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the short presentation. As far as we are very late with the agenda, if I can ask you to have a quick comments for the Adaptation Fund. Meta, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you for pointing out the possible areas of collaboration. I think your invitations to collaboration sounds very good, and I support that the CTCN and the Advisory Board Secretariat follows up as you have lined out. Thank you very much.
Sorry, before giving the floor. Yes, Jim, very quickly, if you can.
Yuka, I'm always very quick and efficient. I just wanted to point out that we have submitted a request for the Innovation Facility Microgrants Program that we submitted through UN Environment. It will be considered by the Adaptation Fund Board next week. Just to give you a bit of information on that, the purpose of that is to support adaptation, innovation in terms of practices, tools, and technologies. Maximum grant amount of $250,000 per country, an expected $10 million grant over 4 years. Our main competition, actually our only competition, is the UNDP Small Grants Program and UN Habitat. And as I mentioned, the Adaptation Fund Board will be making a decision on that next week. So Orly, I know you offered to be a good advocate for CTCN, but if anybody else has friends in the Adaptation Fund Board, now might be a good time to reconnect on Facebook or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, please, Dila.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. I remember I was a member of the first Adaptation Fund Board. So, and really significant results have been achieved, and the presentation is very rich of numbers, and it's difficult to remember and to keep it. And for this reason, I would kindly ask to upload on the website this and the previous presentations. Thank you. Further reading. Thank
you very much. Yes, we will make sure that presentations are delivered to you. If the observers have comments on any of these 4 presentations, please feel free to. No? Okay. Okay. Then I would suggest that we could break for a coffee for 9 minutes. Because we are late, because now it's 4:01, so we can come back for 10, 9, 4 more, yeah. Almost double.
Yeah, I have to say that please come back as soon as possible, because we have 2 major issues here. We need to know what you think about plan of work, and we need to have your actually already textual proposals for the report. The joint annual report, because then we can make that new versions available for you tomorrow morning. So the Secretary will work for your guidance.